If you're thinking about getting rid of your popcorn ceiling and you've thought about putting sheetrock over it because you think that should be easier, I hear that fairly often. I'm going to explain to you why you might want to rethink that. Hey, thanks for stopping by my channel, and today we're going to discuss the subject of covering up popcorn ceilings with sheetrock. It is viable, but there's some definite things you want to think about that you might not have. I've done probably 8 or 10 where I've covered them up that way. I've removed hundreds, but only about 8 or 10 times have I chose to cover it up with another layer of sheetrock. And there's some definite reasons to that. Now, hey, if you like learning these kind of things, these kind of skills, I teach all kinds of them. Be sure and click the subscribe button and click that bell icon, because if you don't click the bell icon, you won't know each time we put out another video that could help you guys out. Also, be sure and look in the description down below this video. I put a lot of good information down there for you guys, like links to the tools we use in these videos, some free ebooks that I give away, and so on. There's a lot of good information down there. I've been doing drywall for over 35 years. I started when I was 8 years old, walking on a pair of stilts, helping my dad. I wasn't tall enough to reach the nails that were this high, so I was really a little kid. And then I was doing it all through high school and every summer and that. So I've got over 35 actual hands-on years of experience, because I've also been in the military for 7 years. I wrote a book about biodiesel manufactured equipment. I've done a few other things. But in that time, I've done a lot of this popcorn ceiling removal and work, and I'm just here to pass on my experience to you guys. When you're thinking about getting rid of a popcorn ceiling, one of the options that might come up is to just cover it up with another layer of sheetrock. And I often hear, just put 1/4 inch sheetrock over it. Well, first of all, if you're going to cover it up, I would recommend not doing 1/4 inch sheetrock. I would go with 3/8 inch or even 1/2 inch. But you got to consider that you're adding a whole lot more weight to that ceiling, and that could cause issues in and of itself. The ceiling was engineered for 1 layer of sheetrock, basically. Now you're doubling the weight, and I've never seen it cause a problem, but I'm just saying that you are doing something that it wasn't really engineered for. Now, why do I say 1/2 inch versus 1/4 inch? Okay, the reason is this. Imagine a popcorn ceiling. You see it right there? All right, it's got all the little bumps, right? Those are styrofoam or vermiculite, but they're basically soft. And so what happens is when you put the sheetrock over that, when you run your screws in, it tends to pop a lot of them. The screws want to go right through the paper. It doesn't have the holding power. I normally, in our area, the code calls for every 12 inches down the middle of the sheet, so that's 1 on each side and every 12 inches, so you get 3 in the middle normally. Now, when I'm doing it over popcorn, I usually put about 5 in, because it's popping so many of them, no matter how careful I am. And the reason is you've got that popcorn layer and you've got the sheetrock layer, and then the new sheetrock layer, and there's that popcorn creates an air void in there. So normally the sheetrock is tight against a stud, and when you run the screw in, it just seats the way it's supposed to. But with that air gap in there and the sponginess of the popcorn, it wants to pop screws like crazy. There's one consideration. Number 2 is you have to use like 2 inch or 2.5 inch screws, because you got more sheetrock to go through. The longer the screw you're running in, the more difficult it is. They tend to want to fold over on you, and they'll just fight you more. And there is that cost too. Now, speaking of cost, you got to think about the cost of what that sheetrock costs you. It's not really cheap these days. For example, a 4x8 sheet like this one on my easel here, it costs about $16 a sheet. Now, it's going to vary depending on where you are. But I would recommend normally trying to hang 12-foot sheets if you can, and that gets kind of pricey. So price is a concern, popping the screws is a concern. Another one is you can't just go in and hang sheetrock like normal. What I mean by that is Normally when we go in, let's say this is the ceiling, so we're looking up at it, and here's some trusses. All right, you go in, normally you see those trusses, they're open, and you just go along and mark on the wall. What we used to do is we would just take our hatchet and mark it, or you can do it with a pencil. You know right where each truss is. So then when you put the sheet up there, you've hidden it, but you can see it on the wall, you marked it, you know where to put your screws, and on this side it's wide open, you can see it. Now when you go to do it over popcorn, you can't see anything. So what you've got to do is go down both sides of the room and saw through the sheetrock until you find it. Stud finders, they kind of work, but the bumpiness makes it really hard to drag your stud finder along. I found I normally just hunt down the first one. Once I find it, I mark both sides of it so I know for sure where it's at, get the center of it, and then try and lay it out on 16-inch or 24-inch centers and see. You go 16 inches, put a screw in. Did you hit anything? If you didn't, go 24 inches, put a screw in. Then go ahead and mark it every 24, but you're going to have to test each one because you can't tell. Sometimes you'll have them spaced evenly, and then all of a sudden you'll have one that's a lot closer, and it'll throw everything off. So you've got to go and find every single truss one at a time. And believe me, just marking out one room, you've got to mark out both sides, and you can't hardly tell where they are. So it can take you 30 minutes to mark out the studs, the ceiling joist in a room. That adds some time to it. Plus, I found it's a real royal pain in the ass. Sometimes you think you found it, and it just comes out a little ways, and then they change direction and go this way. You can't tell because you can't see. So it can take you 30 minutes to an hour to figure out the truss layout. Then when you go to hang it, normally us drywallers, the journeymen, we will just put a sheet up and hang it and eyeball it. We don't mark out on the sheet where each joist is. Now, novices, you might do that, and you might want to for this method because, again, you can't see on this side where the truss is. So sometimes it's a little deceiving, and if it runs off a little bit, it's hard to tell where you went because you can't see the truss up there. So it might be a good idea to take your T-square and just mark out each one, which may mean somebody has to get up there and read all the measurements to you. Adds a lot of time to it. Believe me, it's way slower to hang this stuff over popcorn than it is new. Now here's another concern. I think a lot of you aren't thinking of this. Normally, when you hang drywall, you hang the ceiling first, okay? Part of the reason we do that is because if, let's say, this is the wall right here. If I hang over to the wall, I can allow up to a like 3/8 inch gap over there. It's okay to have a gap. Let me see if I can point this at you better. So I'm going to exaggerate this. It's okay to have a 3/8 inch gap over here because you hang the ceiling first and then you run the wall up to it, and that wall will cover the gap you left there. And we partly do that. We normally allow about 1/4 inch, but you can have up to a 3/8 gap over here because a 1/2 inch is going to cover it. Now, if you hang it over the popcorn, you don't have that luxury of the wall coming up to hide that gap. So that means you now have to hang your sheet tight to it. Or if you don't hang your sheet tight to the wall, then you've got to tape the angle. Now you've messed up the wall. You got to retexture the wall. You got to repaint the wall. You're adding a lot more expense if you don't hang it tight. Some people say, oh, just put crown molding up. Have you ever priced crown molding, and have you ever put it up? It's a pain in the butt. I put it up a few times, and you got to cut it upside down and backwards and all these weird angles. It's not the easiest thing to do, and it's not cheap. Again, cost. So what I do is I try and hang it as tight as I can. I try and get it just as tight to the wall as I can, but that's not easy because walls usually aren't real straight. So normally if we go into a typical bedroom, they're like 11 foot 6 inches. We'll hang a 12 foot sheet in there, no butt joints. Well, with this method, I would hang an 8-foot sheet and put a butt joint, so now you got more butt joints. And the reason I would do that is because if you try and hang one continuous piece, you got to make it fit tight from this end to this end, and they're never parallel. They never fit right. I've tried it and they just fight you to death, and you'll scrape up the walls. It's better to just go ahead and put the butt joint in. Then you can cut that short piece, the butt joint, to fit. And often you got to cut it at a little bit of an angle because you no longer have that 3/8 allowance, 1/4 inch to 3/8. Now then, after I hang it tight, you might go, well, you still got to tape it. Actually, I don't. What I do is I caulk it. If you hang it tight enough, you can go around and just caulk it. Now, consider that previously, here's your old ceiling. It's already taped. It's already sealed. You've already sealed the air gap from here to here. All we're doing is making it look prettier now by caulking it. So we can get away with caulking it. I usually caulk it once, come back the next day and caulk it again. I round it a little bit with my finger. You want to put a decently heavy bead in there. You don't want a really tight one. It'll just shrink away and won't do you any good. So I put 2 coats on because the second day it'll cover anywhere that it went ahead and shrunk back, because you can never get it really, really tight. So there's the way to avoid having to tape and mess up your wall. The way I do it, all I have to do is refinish the ceiling. Hey, just a little bit later in this video, I'm going to feature one of you. One of you sent your photos to me in your story about how you used our videos to do some repairs, retexturing or something, and I'll show you that, highlight you on this video here in just a few minutes. And if you use our advice to do the same thing, send us your photos and your story, and I'll be sure and feature them on a future video. There's an email address in the link in the description down below. Another consideration is on new construction, you got to picture the inside of the house is nothing but studs and open areas. So you can take the sheetrock in any old way you want. You can run into the studs a little bit, bang into things. You're not hurting anything. It's a new construction. But in a finished home, you're trying to bring in all this sheetrock through your furniture and down your hallway, and you got trim on the wall, and it's not that hard to bang into something, knock some trim off, dent your walls, scratch things up. Plus, it makes quite a mess cutting sheetrock inside your house. Another thing, it's actually harder to cut sheetrock in the house because we normally set it up like this and we cut it, and one way we break it is we fold it out like this. Well, when it's sitting on carpet, it doesn't want to slide. You have to pick it up a lot further, and then that corner may bust because it's hanging up in the carpet. So it's a lot harder to hang inside. So I think that's the main things that I can think of. If I think of any more, I'm going to put them here at the end of this video. But before you go, I'm going to put up a few pictures of someone else, one of the viewers who sent me some photos. He did his own texture. He did a skip trowel and kind of a faux finish, I think. And it came out really good. He was really happy with it. I like to feature some of you guys that send your pictures to me. So if you've done some repairs, some drywall that I've helped you with, send me your pictures. There's an email address in the description down below, and I'll try and feature you on one of my future videos. Well, hey, thanks for stopping by my channel. I appreciate you guys coming by because I like helping you. I'm getting a kick out of hearing your stories about how successful you are, how much I'm helping you. This is very satisfying. This is why I do this. So thanks a lot. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. Take care, everybody.